The financial views and opinions expressed by the host and guests on this program do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of 1077 The Bronx, Rider University, or Certified Wealth Management and Investment. The material discussed is not designed to provide the listeners with individual financial, legal, or tax advice.
Show me the money!
Where's my money, man?
Here comes the money!
Here we go.
It's time to grow your bank as 1077 The Bronx presents Master Your Finances with Kurtis Baker, a certified financial planner professional with certified wealth management and investment. Kurt and his team of financial guests will help you turn those singles into seas of green and plan your financial future accordingly. Now here's your money managing host for the hour, Kurtis Baker.
You want to gain a new perspective on health and wellness? Would you like to learn how to improve your health through long-term, sustainable behavior change rather than crash diets, gimmicks, or fads? Joe Villegas, the founder and CEO of Paragon Well-Being, a health and wellness company serving individuals and businesses to optimize their health and overall well-being, will share with you a series of frameworks and actionable steps you can take to not only improve your own health, but the health and well-being of those around you. With over 10 years of experience working with individuals and groups from all walks of life, Joe will help you feel empowered, in control, and at ease about how simple it is to make a significant change in your life. That's awesome, man. So I know just my own little journey, it's like I know what to do, but I'm not always doing it.
Sure.
So it's like the brain is not connecting to the action, so to speak. So you want to tell us a little bit. I guess let's start off a little bit with how did you get into this? So
Yeah, no doubt. Well, first things first, thank you for having me today. This is super cool, so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I actually fell into coaching. I had no desire or or any sort of dream of becoming a coach. And truth be told, I was never even an athlete growing up. I did t-ball and that kind of stuff, but I was a band kid, man. I was a drummer, did all that through college. And when I got out of college, realized that I put on a freshman 15 every year that I was in college. So it was time to turn that around. And started working out, joined a local CrossFit gym in Princeton. And the owner approached me and just said, hey, man, he's like, you're here all the time. People seem to like you a lot. And I need coaches. Would you be interested in getting certified? And I just jumped at the opportunity. I was like, absolutely, would love to. And that was actually almost 10 years ago to the day, which is kind of funny that here we are talking about it.
That's great.
Or a little more than that, actually. And so, yeah, I got into coaching and really didn't know much outside of the certification that I got. So it was a lot of doing your homework and working with people and just trying to learn by experience. And that grew into friends and friends of friends asking me hey, I can't come to the gym, but can you write me a program or can you help me with my diet or whatever? And I didn't want to turn anybody away. I wanted to help them out. And so it just kind of blossomed into, okay, now I have my own sort of side thing. I'm helping people remotely, with their stuff. And then that grew into other opportunities as well. So I was very fortunate to go work with a lot of amateur fighters, MMA and Muay Thai and things like that. A lot of fighters out of Philadelphia. And that led into working with some of the guys from the UFC, which was pretty cool, helping fighters, cut weight in a safe way before their fights and all that, helping to rehydrate them and those sorts of things. And then that led to, going in and doing some speaking gigs. So I would go into companies and speak to their employees and talk about hey, like you said, you know what to do, but how come you don't do what you know, right? And how to actually implement that. And then that sort of blossomed into doing more of the corporate side of stuff, which selfishly I like doing. I like talking to groups. I like, meeting with groups and having an impact there. But yeah, that's how it all kind of really blossomed.
I'm going to go back to your personal journey for just a minute.
Yeah, no doubt.
Because we've had two conversations offline here. And I got to bring them up. One is I started talking about things that you do, and I go, I don't even know what it's called, but I don't know. I call it throwing the trees across the thing where they get in the kilt and what is that called?
Scottish Highland Games.
Scottish Highland Games. And he goes, we were talking about it. He goes, oh yeah, I do that. And I go, wait a minute, you literally pick up what looks like a utility pole and you throw it across the yard. And I go, okay, that's cool. And then jokingly, before we come on the air, we were supposed to work out together, but you couldn't do it. And I was talking about how I was so happy I'd done my 265 and barely made 6 and hurt myself a little bit, just a little. And then I go, yeah, you must be doing over 300. And you said, what?
Yeah, so my best deadlift is 625.
Okay, so you went from band to 625. So obviously there were some steps in between.
A lot of steps.
You became because I've been there because in my 40s I didn't work out at all.
Sure.
And then I'd worked out when I was younger, a lot, craziness. but it was all like cardio. And then I didn't work out at all.
Right.
And then I worked out a little bit after that. And then I just recently, a couple of years back, 4 or 5 years ago, started getting into the weights because I realized as you get older, you got to do more of the resistance stuff.
100%,
So this is just my own personal quick story.
Yeah.
How did you go from band, I know the 15, to actually taking it really seriously? What was kind of the back and forth that went through you?
Yeah, no doubt. So joining that CrossFit gym was really pivotal. So if anybody who's listening has done CrossFit before, you're interested in doing it, obviously recommend it. It's a great like gateway to a lot of different types of activity. So everything from running, rowing, lifting, body weight movements and such. And so when I joined up, it's not just the workouts. There's a very big culture and like community component to it as well. So you're in, a class setting. I'm sure you feel the same way with your classes that you go to.
Absolutely. I love the class. I have to have somebody else yelling at me, so to speak, I say jokingly. But it's a great to have peers.
Yes.
And kind of guiding you. And they help you from hurting yourself, too. They tell you to do it right.
Right.
Because I did a lot wrong, still working on it.
Sure.
And that's a key part of feeling comfortable about doing it.
Yes.
And then seeing the results, obviously, is awesome. So the CrossFit started, and you got the camaraderie, and you learned how to do it right, I guess, right?
Exactly. And part of that community is going beyond just showing up for class. So it's learning about things like your nutrition, how to improve that, to some degree, right? So when I first started out, I was a recovering band kid. And,
so funny.
Truthfully, like weak as a bird. Like I could maybe deadlift 185 pounds, for one. Like it really wasn't anything.
Right.
And actually funny, truth be told, I had bought a weight set prior to joining, did a 185-pound deadlift in my basement and hurt my back.
Oh, okay.
So I literally starting from ground zero.
Okay. Well, that's awesome.
But yeah, so I got into it, and really, it wasn't anything like, I want to deadlift 600 pounds. That wasn't my goal.
Right.
Like for those of you who haven't met me or are listening, like I have a big frame to begin with. I'm a big guy. Like I'm 6'4", so I'm very tall. And I gravitated more toward the heavy lifting components of CrossFit because doing all those pull-ups is tough when you're
you got
big,
a lot to pick up, right?
Yeah. So I gravitated more toward this, like strongman's my primary sport. That's my favorite sport. And so I gravitated more toward those types of workouts. And then strongman obviously it's like a very niche sport, right? You're picking up rocks and cars and weird stuff.
Right.
But from there, I actually got into Highland Games, which is they say like heavy athletics or heavy throwing, which I obviously had no track and field history growing up in high school or anything. But that is where you're throwing some like weird stuff. So like the caber, that big telephone pole, that's where that comes in.
All right, gotcha.
Launching heavy stones, hammers, and things like that. But I always just had a lot of fun lifting heavy things. And so something like, for those who are listening, if they're like, they want to start working out or they've tried workouts and just hasn't stuck in the past, I always say the best workout you can do is the one that you enjoy doing because you're more likely to stick with it. So quick story. I had a buddy in high school who, when you hit that point, like sophomore to junior year, everyone's like, they're getting, they're growing, they're getting taller, whatever. And I had a friend he was heavy set. And I remember him showing up the first week of school, junior year, and he had lost a ton of weight.
Right.
And we're like, Brian, like, what happened to you? Like, what's going on? He goes, I got the answer. We're like, what is it? And he goes, DDR. Remember that video game, Dance Dance Revolution?
Oh my
gosh. He played that every day for like 2 hours straight and would just sweat his butt off in his parents' basement. And that's how he lost the weight. And we're like, when I think back on it, I'm like, yeah, that was the answer for him because he liked it and he stuck with it and he did it every day for 2 hours. Right. You know what I mean? So for me, like, does running a marathon get me excited? Not in the least. But if you say, hey, we're going to go deadlift or we're going to bench press or whatever, I'm like, I'm game, let's rock and roll. So that appeals to me. So I got, to wrap it up, I got to that point of deadlifting that much because I just enjoyed it. And I was willing to do it all the time, basically.
Okay, that's awesome. So really when you're working out, it's key to find out what you like.
Yes.
And you have all that history where you develop it into a profession now. So let's touch on that a little bit, right? So once you got it down, you're obviously motivated, you became a coach, you started training other people. Yep. So then what? Kind of take us past that a little bit.
Yeah. So like in the CrossFit stuff, I was there coaching at least 3 nights a week, weekends, that whole thing. And it's all class based for the most part, which I really enjoyed because you're kind of, in the front of the room and you're sort of like performing in a way. Like these people, they get off work, they're tired, they maybe they want to be there, but maybe they're not that bad. They might want to go home and just relax.
Right.
And it's up to you to like kind of, bring the fire a little bit and put it back into them. And I always use the analogy of like, it's sort of like the Santa Claus analogy, right? Like when you first start training, it's like you're a little kid and Santa's, I don't know, spoil it for anybody listening, but Santa's real exciting, whatever.
Right. Yep,
and then eventually, like as you get older, you're kind of like, oh, you don't maybe so believe in it so much anymore. But then when you become the parent,
right,
you have to instill the magic again. And that's kind of how I always approached coaching was,
okay,
all right, I'm running this class. There's some people who they look like they want to be here, and some people who obviously look like they maybe don't want to be here right now, like they got other things going on. And so I always felt like it was up to me to sort of like make Santa real again and like bring the magic and excite them about the class and get them into it. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. But like I said, I had friends and family and whoever else who were asking me to help them outside of the gym. They couldn't make it or they didn't live near Princeton or what have you. And so that's when I started doing more of like the online training piece, which is my entire company now is online. Like we don't have a brick and mortar location. We do it fully remote, through our app and all that stuff. But I like that a lot because I'm not just with that person for an hour, right? I can correspond with them all day if they needed to and get them the answers they need. So like routinely we'll have clients who reach out and say like, hey man, I'm going out to dinner with these people. Like here's the menu for the place. Like what should I get? I don't even, I don't know what to do, whatever. And like we're right there, we can get back to them and help them out. So it's pretty cool. Like if they weren't in the gym, I wouldn't be able to do that for them at that time. So I like the fact that there is a lot of, there's a very easy avenue to get in touch with your coach all the time.
Right.
So that's what appealed to me was like I'm able to help people more often, right, and at a deeper level because they can connect much more with me.
Well, that's really awesome. Yeah, we're going to take a quick break here, and we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about this. You're listening to Master Your Finances.
Yeah, you've got loads of money, but it's all about how you manage it. Let's get back to learning how to grow your green with Kurt Baker of Certified Wealth Management and Investment, only on Master Your Finances.
Welcome back. You're listening to Master Your Finance here with Joseph. We're talking about really just being healthier and doing what works for you. And I think that's a real key that I know I've found in my life because when I was younger, I loved to swim and I still like it, but I enjoy the class. I enjoy working out with other people. So I like the camaraderie of getting together. So it's really about that. And if you get tired of one thing, you switch it up.
Yep.
And I think that's, some people say, well, I do this, but I'm not going to do that. Well, do something else. Go biking, go walking, go whatever. I mean, as long as you're moving, you're doing some good for yourself. So
totally.
you found your passion, which you love to do yourself, and you're obviously good at teaching others. So you enjoyed that. Now you've incorporated that into a way to really reach more people in multiple ways. So you've got the online part of it, plus they can communicate with you. So how did you go from like you're coaching as a CrossFit person and doing stuff outside, and now
like building
you built up an app. I mean, there's a lot involved here. So how did you go from that? I mean, there's a lot of coaches out there.
For sure.
But not everybody started a company that does what you do. So how did you transition into this? I really think I need to do this. Why did you think you needed to do it? And then how did you take those first steps to get it done?
Yeah, great question. So I'll just preface this with, this is certainly not an overnight thing, right? Just like your body, this isn't a 12-week program. It's not like that. I mean, this is built over the last decade, So there were times where, things were like too busy. Like I couldn't keep up, and times where things were really quiet. But it was in those times where I was actually pushing to grow and do different things. So really started with, and I joke around like I was doing online coaching before it was cool, like before it became like a big thing, obviously pre-pandemic and all that.
There you go.
But it was, quite literally like spreadsheets and stuff I would just put together for clients, and we'd email correspond back and forth. And that was how I did it for a long time. And those folks, they just have my number and they would just text me, and I had my little schedule in the day and I'd stay on top of them and keep up. And it actually wasn't until just before the pandemic, like 2019, where I had done a series of talks with companies. So like I had a couple clients who were, more like higher power individuals, at different companies and such. And they asked me to come in and do talks. And I asked myself the question, I said, it's really fun to do the one-on-one thing, to coach folks individually online. That's great. I was like, but I like doing like the talks and the seminars, and I'd love to be around longer than just an hour and help these people. And oftentimes when I go do these things, I'll just hang out until they get their questions answered, and make sure they get what they need. But I'm like, how could we set up a program where like an employee can just hop on and just follow along and like get the help they need and ask a real coach and that kind of thing. So that's what led into the technology piece of it. It's like, there's no way I could do that myself with a super large group. Right. And I had at the time a couple coaches that were sort of contracted out with me. They were working for me, and they thought it was like the coolest idea ever. So I started doing some homework and some research, and like we have our app now, but that was, I mean, multiple iterations.
Okay, yeah, I get it.
So it's like there are apps out there that trainers use for sure, and some of them have they all have their pros and cons, and some of them are better suited for the one-to-one thing. Some are better suited for the group thing, but we do both. So it's how do you actually handle both? And there was a period of time where we were working with a company that basically, it's like they give you the Lego pieces to build the app, and you just put them where you need them, and then you try and go from there. And that was like, I mean, a lot of late nights and early mornings trying to figure that out. And eventually we just—
You're not a programmer too?
No.
Okay.
My brother. That's my brother.
Okay.
He's the programmer. He's the smart one. But basically, we ended up scrapping it all after like a year and a half of like okay, it does 7 out of 10 things, but these other 3 are real important. We just scrapped it. Or like, you eventually got to know when to pivot. And that was something where, I needed that input from my team to say, hey, like, this isn't really cutting it for us. We got to ditch this thing.
Okay.
So we scrapped it and moved on to a different platform. We paired up with a gentleman down in Florida. I randomly came across him online. I just found his website and we started talking. Yeah. And it's just like this conversation now, right? Like, I met you because I went to a chamber event and all these things. And I'm always fascinated with who you meet along the way in your journey and like the role they might play in your life. I'm just like fascinated by that. So Chris is the guy's name. And so we got together and he basically was able to like white label his entire platform for us and do this whole entire thing. And it's perfectly suited for what our needs are and how we handle individuals and groups. And so it wasn't like I woke up one morning and had this amazing idea for an app and then put it together. It was lots of time put into apps that didn't quite make the cut, and then pivoting and all of a sudden this popped up and it worked out. So I'm a big believer in like, if you're listening to this and you have a dream and you have something you're iterating on, you're playing around with, like, you got to go out and swing the bat. Like, those cool opportunities only come up when you're out there playing. You're not going to get it just meditating on top of a mountain, and you're not going to get it sitting still. Like, you have to be out there playing the game, and that's what turned up for us. So I know it's the question is kind of loaded. Like, I could be here all day talking about it.
No, it's cool. One thing I keep hearing, you just said it, was that essentially a lot of people think, I don't want to start doing this project because I don't know all the answers.
Yeah.
So as long as you can start something that makes some sense.
Yeah.
The networking on the way is getting exposure, because what happens is when you get exposure to whatever it is you do, my business is the same way.
Yes.
You get feedback and you get suggestions. As long as you're communicating with people and you're listening to what they tell you.
Right.
Then you can keep modifying, and before you know it, you're pretty darn good at what you do, because your customer base and the people you meet along the way are assisting you because they want to assist you, because they want you to succeed. Because if I'm on the other end and I want the app, I'm going to tell you, hey, look, this is all good, but this is not. And if you listen to them and try to figure out a way, if that seems to be a consensus, to solve it, eventually everybody's going to stick with you because they like that kind of thing. And then because you met one of your clients was a corporate person.
Yeah.
So that was having a good relationship with your clients.
Yes.
Connect you to the corporations.
Yep.
And then you went out and found the app wasn't working. You realized that. You recognized it wasn't solving it. And then you found this other person.
Yeah.
Chris worked out well. So that's amazing. But yeah, the networking aspect in life is just huge. Whether you work for a corporation or whether you're an entrepreneur, networking is number one.
Yes.
Right. So anyway, I just thought I'd touch that.
No,
on
it's a great
that's
a great
an
point.
amazing part of like being successful.
Definitely.
The more
And
people you know, the more you're going to get done.
Yeah, like they say, like your net worth is your network, right? Or vice versa, right? So
it's true.
But another point to what you said, Kurt, was don't get so wrapped up in the how. Like people worry about like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? Like the how is really none of your business. You know what I mean? Like, because things are going to pop up into your frame of reference that you couldn't predict. I'm not even gonna attempt to quote it because I'll mess it up. But Steve Jobs has a good quote about like connecting the dots, behind you, but like, you just have to have faith going forward, basically. So you guys can.
Well, I remember
Google it.
I found out that he was never a programmer.
No,
I didn't know that until years after he was successful. And I go, what do you mean? I just assumed he sat in his basement was programming this stuff.
I did too.
I go, he didn't know anything about it. All he knew was he knew what people wanted before they knew what they wanted.
Right.
And he found the people that actually build it.
100%.
And I was like, well, that makes a lot of sense when you think about it, but I just assumed he was a tech guy.
No, Richard Branson's the same way. Like he always says, he's like, I'm not the smartest guy, and if I am, I'm in the wrong room. Right? Yeah, you got to bring in the right people.
Well, I just saw when he goes, I've been an entrepreneur for entrepreneurship. I've been involved in for, 40, 50 years now, and I still have a hard time pronouncing it.
Right. Like, I can't even spell it, so it's like you're fine.
I was like that sounds like him, right? But the idea is you just go.
Right.
And if you get the right people along the way,
yes,
they're going to help you realize what your vision is, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's kind of some of the fun in it, right? And it's tough because a lot of people cling to certainty. Like they like to know like how things are going to play out, whatever. But like imagine if you knew every single thing that was going to happen every minute of the day, you'd be bored out of your mind. Sure. So when I look at this sort of like entrepreneur journey, like there's adventure ahead, and I'm going to meet cool people, and I'm going to, run into problems, and like that's all part of that river of life. Like you have to be okay with the bends in the river, and you just got to kind of go with it. Right. And so it took me a long time to like get comfortable with it. And there's certainly times where I need to remind myself to get comfortable with it. But the more I do, I find I notice like these really cool things that pop up that I would have missed had I been so concerned with it must go my way and it must be the way that I planned it. Like your plan doesn't really matter because something better could come along. So you're going to stick to your plan when a better opportunity shows up? Right. Probably not. So it should, there should be some flexibility there. You
absolutely have to be flexible and stay ahead of the curve, so to speak. So now that you got your app, now you got your white label app from Chris, you got it done. Yeah. So now what happened next at that point? Yeah. So that happened, and then really it's like we've talked before is the push to just get in front of more eyeballs, right? And so like we have basically a campaign now where, and this is I guess for anybody listening, if you're working at your company or you run a company and you would like us to come in and just do a free seminar, like we're doing free seminars for groups. Really, because they may not already have an existing wellness program. Maybe they have one and they need to freshen up a little bit. But it's just getting like good quality content and information out to folks that can take it that day and go, do something with it and better their total well-being. So that's a big thing we're doing right now, along with like we do a lot of team challenges and stuff like that with groups, which we have a lot of fun with because it gets not necessarily like super competitive or anything like that, but it just brings a lot of camaraderie to groups, and it's like really kind of fun to see that play out. Compete against my boss, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
If you're gonna make me do something, maybe I can put them down a notch or two.
Right. Exactly. Show deadlift in front of them or something. Yeah, exactly. Show them what's up.
Yeah, so that's really cool. Sure. We got a lot to get into here, so I'm going to take another quick break, but we're going to get into like what you're doing now and how it's all structured and why you structured it the way you did.
Absolutely.
You're listening to Master Your Finances. We'll be right back.
We're not just doing this for money. We're doing it for a shitload of money.
If you want to learn how to make and manage that kind of money, turn the volume up as we get back to Master Your Finances with Kurt Baker of Certified Wealth Management and Investment.
Welcome back. You're listening to Master Your Finance. I'm here with Joseph and Villegas, right?
Villegas,
so, yeah, exactly. So we're going to... I mean, this is just amazing because just a little bit of my background. I mean, on my nonprofit side, we deal with mental health, suicide prevention, things like that. And so I have a little bit of knowledge about this. And I remember several years ago, I think it was a little bit before the pandemic, 18 or 19, roughly that range, where the cost on a corporate level, the cost of mental health care exceeded the cost of physical care, right? So if you break your arm, that's the physical, right? But if you have an anxiety breakdown and you have to go to the hospital, that's mental health.
Right.
And companies are now realizing, at least I think, that you have to pay a lot more attention to the employee health because when you do, whether it's physical or mental, you actually get more productivity, you get higher satisfaction with your employees, better retention, just all the numbers go up. And sometimes companies have a hard time understanding that if I spend more money here, they don't see the other number immediately, and they don't grasp it because they're not sitting in front of a spreadsheet where you can't just say, if I'm going to spend X over here, I'm going to get Y over here.
Right.
But now larger companies have started to really understand that through these experiments that they've been doing. So can you kind of explain to people a little bit why this is so important and how this fits into that overall care of the employees?
Yeah, for sure. And so I mean, I think it's worth noting like the ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? So it can be hard quantitatively to sit there and say, well, if we pay X dollars for a wellness program now, are we going to make Y dollars back in the long run? And obviously I have a bit of a biased opinion, right? Because this is my whole world. But there are more markers than your insurance premiums that you can factor in here. And so a big piece of what we look at are things like you said, retention, right? So especially like I'm in the millennial class, right? Like millennial folks are looking for more than
one of those.
Oh yeah, one of those. You're right. Exactly. But like they're looking for more than just a paycheck, right? Like there's a lot of companies that offer a lot of cool benefits, and they're taking a lot of the employee share. But it's like, what can you give your employees today that you're genuinely trying to help them beyond just their bills. But so, retention obviously being a big one. Also, too, is things like discretionary effort. At least that's what we call it. So folks who show up to work that have more energy are just going to do more stuff.
Discretionary effort.
Yeah, like how are they going to try harder?
I'm
right?
just not coasting.
No, exactly.
You're coasting my way through the day. Right?
and that's another, like, you hear the term engagement thrown around a lot. It's like, how do we increase engagement at our company? And I mean it's a real problem, right? You have folks who come in, they just kind of punch their 8 hours and they leave, 9 to 5, whatever. That's fine. But there's studies that show companies that have higher engagement rates are actually 21% more profitable than those who don't.
Right.
And companies who have lower engagement rates have 31 to 50% higher turnover.
Wow.
So it is everything to try and increase the engagement of your employees. How do you do that? So for us, we have that sort of, our angle, right, is through health and wellness. And so in going to a lot of companies and doing talks and working with people, even individuals, engagement from our viewpoint is low because of folks coming into work with like low energy levels, low vitality. Like if someone comes into work and they're just exhausted mentally, physically, what have you, they're not going to jump out of their seat to like get that report done for you. You know what I mean? Like they're not doing backflips to attend another meeting or get on another Zoom. But if you're helping them to balance their lifestyle out, if you're helping them to optimize their mental health and wellness or optimize their physical health and wellness or both, right? They're going to have more energy. They're going to try harder. They're going to appreciate the fact that you're taking care of them or at least attempting to in some way. And those things increase engagement. We also, through our programs, focus a lot on like inclusion. So I know that term is thrown around a lot. Inclusion, as it means to us, at least in this example, is making sure that our programs speak to everybody at the company, right? So, you might have somebody who's a, crazy CrossFitter at your company who does a ton of stuff. Like they don't need to be convinced to go work out or start getting their steps in. But you might have someone who's never worked out in their life and they're 3 years from retirement and they're like, well, why am I doing this now? So the program needs to have something. It's like, what's in it for them, right? It needs to have something for everybody. And that's what we try to do is sculpt it in a way where not only is it, the people who don't need convincing can get into it, but the people who are like, maybe they're not sure, they want to dip their toe in and try it out, it speaks to them. It's not intimidating. It's something where they can join in, have fun, again, get their questions answered, get the information they need to be successful at their level, right? They don't have to go from zero to deadlifting 1 million pounds, right? They can just do what speaks to them.
And I think that's a big part of this is that these are small steps. And I know me personally, all I can do is go back to myself. Sure. One was I just woke up one day and said, I feel like crap. I got to go do something. Right? I didn't know what it was. Like, let me get back in the pool, start swimming. And I did it. Then the next phase of this whole operation was I still wasn't, because swimming, unfortunately, by itself, or even weightlifting, you're not going to lose weight. So I needed to lose weight, and I'm hypertension, on the borderline. Yep. So my weight is a key part of that. So I said, I really got to cut it down, otherwise I'm going to have to go on medications. I don't really want to do that.
No.
So that became the next part. Now the diet part comes into it.
Yes.
So you want to talk a little bit about how you can kind of step in this slowly? Because the problem that I saw is that anybody I've known, including myself, if you kind of do everything at once, you're just going to be like, I don't like this. It's uncomfortable. I hate this.
Yes.
So how do we do like these little steps on either side? Because it doesn't really matter where you start.
Right.
One, both, either or. It doesn't really matter. Just do something. If you're incrementally better, long term, it doesn't matter if you're 20 or you're 80.
Yes.
It all, you have, the 2 years from now, how do you want to feel? You want to feel better or worse?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you want to feel better than you would have at 80 or 82, you might as well start something now.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. So, and that's a great point, right? Is oftentimes programs are like 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks. You take that body and that brain with you everywhere you go.
Right.
Forever. So it's great to make the investment now. So a couple quick frameworks that we like to work off of, and actually I got these from a guy named Alex Hermosi. He's like big in the gym space, but he talks about this concept of like a skill ladder. And so if you picture a ladder, right, the two legs on either side. So one leg would be like they represent like the beliefs you have about yourself or the world or like your ability to achieve whatever it is you want to achieve. So let's say the goal is to lose weight, just for sake of example. The other leg would be your personality traits. So like, are you punctual? Are you disciplined? Things like that. But the rungs on the ladder are skills.
Right.
And the more skills you acquire, the higher you can build this ladder, right? And its strength is determined by your skills, your beliefs, and your personality traits. I'm very much in the camp that you can build belief in yourself and you can build personality traits through skill acquisition. Okay, and then you'll see where I'm going with this in a second.
Okay.
So for somebody just starting out, or somebody who feels like they're stuck, like maybe they are working out and they feel like, oh, I'm just hitting plateau after plateau. What do I do? There's some skill in there that you're not mastering yet. And if you can master that skill, whatever the next thing is, so in your case, right, you were saying, all right, I started working out, but that wasn't enough to like really tip the needle on the scale.
Correct.
So I need to focus on my nutrition. Well, that's like your next skill. You need to figure that out.
Right.
And how do we do that? So, you can go Google things and whatever. What I would say is like work with a coach, because you have somebody who has ideally years of experience, and they can condense the time frame for you into a matter of days, weeks, or months. So the more skills you stack over time, right, the more proficient you are at achieving whatever that goal is. Correct. So for me, like I said before, I didn't just I fell into coaching. I didn't become a coach because I had some crazy dream of becoming a coach. I acquired skills myself when I first started trying to lose weight. So I learned how to work out. I learned how to prep my meals. I learned how to count my calories, so on and so forth. I got into coaching. So I had to learn how to run a class. I had to learn how to run individual stuff. I had to learn how to write programs, and so on and so forth, to the point where now I run a coaching business. But it all stems from these skills I acquired over time. So if your goal is to lose weight, you need to look at all the aspects that come with that. So it could be your nutrition, exercise, improving your sleep, reducing your stress, hydration. And yes, it sounds like a lot, and that's because it is. So how do you go about doing this? One step at a time, right? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Right.
So in this case, what I typically focus on with folks first is their food.
Okay.
Is their nutrition, because you're going to be eating regardless. Like you might work out, you might not work out.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, right. And like food is usually the biggest one that we need to work with. Like even like psychologically, it can be very challenging to curb that. But even, truth be told, every seminar I go and do, the first two things we always talk about are sleep and getting your blood work done. So you understand like what's going on under the hood. And then we get into food for a good portion of it, so that folks understand like, it's not the diets that you're picking that are going to be the answer for you. There's underlying principles that those diets adhere by. And that's the reason you're losing weight. So like any diet could work, as long as you stick with it. And when it stops working, you're violating some of these nutrition principles. We probably don't have a ton of time to get into all of it on here.
Right.
Maybe we can, but
a little bit.
Once you understand those principles, then you can get into understand like, all right, what do I need to do by playing by the rules that works for me? So some folks might, they might say, oh, I want to weigh and measure everything. I want to do this, I want to do that. But their brain isn't ready to handle all of those things at once. Like you were saying, like you could do all these 50 things at once, like the New Year's resolution folks, right? I'm going to do it all on January 2nd, when I'm done being hungover. I'm going to get after it. But your brain is not, it's not ready yet to handle all that at once. So just pick one thing. So for instance, this is an example for the listeners, a habit that we actually focus on with folks first, a lot of the time, especially if they're newer, is to try eating slowly. Just eat slower. Like how many people listening when they're eating, they'll just eat an entire snack during a commercial break of a TV show or something. You know what I mean? Like they'll just like chow down because maybe they're in a rush, maybe they're busy, whatever the case is. But when you slow down, you're much more mindful about what you're eating. You start to ask yourself, like, do I really need to have this entire plate right now? Or actually, I'm starting to feel full. I don't need to finish this because I feel satisfied. Because
it takes several minutes from the time you actually put it in your system, and you actually know, and your stomach realizes. Because one of the things I've heard over the years is you put your fork down between each bite. You just wait a second, take a breath or two, and before you know it, instead of like eating it in 3 minutes, it might take you 10 or whatever, right? So, but during that period of time, you might get full at minute 7 or 8.
100%.
And you're like, that's enough, and then to know to stop, right? It's
right.
It's okay to take the rest home. Like the old clean your plate thing is.
I grew up in that household.
Yeah,
man.
a lot of us did. It's like, there it is. There are people starving overseas somewhere.
Right. Like okay.
Like, well, how's that going to help them?
Yeah, I can't deliver this to so.
Yeah, so that's awesome. You're listening to Master Your Finance. We're going to take another quick break.
Do you want to prevent this from happening to you?
And it's gone. It's all gone.
Listen closely as we now return to Master Your Finances with Kurt Baker of Certified Wealth Management and Investment.
Welcome back. You're listening to Master Your Finance. I'm here with Joe. And yeah, this is cool stuff because I've kind of gone this journey myself. So I really think this is really important. The different traits that you want to make sure that people learn. And I think part of this, at least for me, was not to put too rigid of a time frame on it.
Yes.
And if you slip a little, that's okay as long as you kind of stay the course. It's kind of like you're on a boat.
Yep.
If the current takes you a little bit off to the side, as long as you kind of keep that goal and you have that place on your radar where you want to head to, you can just recorrect. just keep chugging towards it. Every once in a while you're going to make a setback. So as long as you kind of focus on it, I think that's good. And you touched on one thing that I think is really important that at least I notice is that when you're eating right a little bit better, even if it's just a little bit better, and exercising a little bit, just a little, doesn't have to take a ton from what you're doing now, you will sleep better, which I find that's critical. And then you're more efficient when you go to work. And I think sometimes people misunderstand, I work really, really hard. And I've known many people that work an 8-hour day that are far more productive than people that work a 12-hour day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there is a diminishing return on this. And so you need to really put your mind and your body are connected.
Yes.
So when your body is healthier and is running better, your mind is going to be healthier and run better, which equates to better relationships, equates to better profit lines, bottom lines, things like that. And I think people are starting to understand that, but I bet you're having some resistance. I know on our nonprofit side, we get resistance even though we know this stuff works.
Yes.
So what are you seeing as far as how people are receiving this and their response, and how do they say, yeah, you're right, maybe we need to do something for our employees?
Yeah, definitely. And so typically when I go into those conversations, we sort of fall into one of two camps with people. You either get like the HR manager or the VP or CEO who like they work out, they get it. They're like, yes, we know this is important. And then we might have a different discussion, like whether it's, budget related or what have you. Which I would argue like the way we run our corporate stuff, it's actually not expensive at all for them to implement a lot of this stuff. But when we do have conversations with folks where it's not on their radar, maybe personally or otherwise, I think a lot of times they get hung up on like, well, what's the ROI? What's the ROI? That kind of stuff. And that's fine. Like I would expect that, right? Because that's the world that they live in. But when it boils down to it, like I said earlier, like there's stats on companies with higher engagement rates are going to be 21% more profitable. So if I said to you, okay, let us come in for 6 months. Let's do a program with your team for 6 months. And if you see a bump in your productivity, right, ultimately your profitability, would that be worth it to you, right? Like what is 21% to your company? Like give me the number. What does that mean?
Yeah.
And I say, okay, our program's going to cost 2% of that. Right. Is that worth it to you? That kind of thing. So do I push it that hard down their throat? Absolutely not. That's not, we're not here to do that. But it's more of them understanding, like you said earlier, at the beginning of the show, it is a long-term play. And it's a long-term investment in your people. And that's really what we're going for here. It's not like, again, and if anyone listening's picked up on this, I'm sure they have, is like my approach, my coach's approach, how we approach everything, whether it's one-on-one or with a big group, it is a long-term play. And if you're going to make these behavior changes or these culture shifts in your company, it's not going to happen tomorrow. And it's not going to happen in 2 months. It's going to happen over a long period of time. But we're here to help them guide that. And we're here to help them build that out and create essentially the vision that they had probably when they started the company, however many years ago, and help to evolve and cultivate that. So that's really, what we get at is to help them build that culture and build that community and that camaraderie in their group. And it just benefits everything. We say like when you improve everything improves. Right? Correct. Yeah. So that's really kind of.
And one thing I just struck to me when you were talking about that was that not just for your current employees, but then if I'm going to go out and I need to, because a lot of employers are looking to hire, right? So I'm going to go hire somebody.
Yes.
If you have this aspect to it where they're actually helping you take care of your health, I think more and more people think about that because obviously healthcare is a big issue for everybody. They worry about it whether now or the future, depending on, because at some point in your life that will likely be one of your biggest expenses, especially when you age.
We say like if you don't make time for health now, you're going to have to make time for illness later.
Right.
Period. So like whoever's listening to this, like you don't have to sign up with us. That's not the point. The point is like do something, do anything. And if you're someone who works at a company and you have the power to make a decision, like make that investment in your people, whether it's with us or not. Right. But I would say do the right thing and help these people out. Because,
so how does the program work? I want to get into just a little bit because I know it's the last segment. We only have a few minutes left. But,
absolutely.
But I know you're doing this and you're encouraging people. So how do you actually get people? Like, let's say we're doing a 6 month. Let's try it out and see what happens. So what are some tools you implement for these people that maybe have done nothing?
For sure.
And they're like resistant. They're like, oh, I don't want to do this.
For the company, you mean?
Yeah, just company wide.
Yeah.
Because some employers are going to be like, yeah, this is great. Other employeers are like, I don't want to do that. It's baloney.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Hopefully not, but
I got other things to do that are more important.
We do surveys, quite a bit of surveys up front to see what's even relevant to the employees themselves, right? So if everyone at the company, let's say, is really into mindfulness, well, coming in and doing a talk about nutrition, it's not really going to resonate. Right. So really kind of look for that topic that resonates with them, and we start there. The beauty of it is like we're able to kind of mold that into other aspects of wellness and make it a more holistic approach over time. So we'll begin with just a general survey. And obviously, like, we're outlining this with whoever the person is at the company, but just generically speaking. So we'll get an idea of what's important to the staff, maybe where some gaps are in their own health, like, hey, where do you struggle, like that kind of stuff, and get a real broad sense of the group. And then from there, we'll usually kick off with a seminar. So they get to kind of see us, hopefully in person if we can swing it.
Right.
But they kind of get more acquainted with the group. So it's not like, hey, you have a wellness program now, like go do this thing. Like, oh, wait, I know the Paragon guys. Like we saw them already. They're cool, you know? So that's kind of like our icebreakers. We'll come in and do a talk about that relevant topic, get them excited. Then from there, we usually we'll at the end of the seminar, we'll announce, hey, we're going to do a 21-day or a 30-day challenge with you guys. Here's how it's going to work. They get the rundown. So it's a way to kind of like bring us in. It's not threatening to the group, right? It's like a fun new event. Hey, we're going to do this challenge to kick it off, get as many people into it as we can. And then once that challenge is done, if the company decides to go beyond that, we have like our continuity program. So every month they're getting fresh content. Essentially in our app, when you hop into it, each employee is going to have, you know, a little habit or two to do each day. It's stuff where they can literally hop on at any point in time. They can hop on the train or off the train whenever they want, but they can hop on and just follow along, and it's going to help them to optimize their overall health and wellness. So then throughout the year, we'll run other webinars, other little challenges and stuff like that. But that's generally how it's structured. It's sort of like a couple cool big events up front to like really get them going. And then they're on the longer program where they still get those events and they have fun. But it's something like a good, big, strong kickoff to get that engagement and really drive it while they're really excited in the beginning. And then we try to keep that going.
So how do you get them excited? You keep saying they're getting excited. So you just you describe like maybe what you do to get, because I'm thinking of like, I know a lot of people like this. They're like, you know, I don't really want to do this.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
I mean, you got to kind of get them to buy in, something they really probably haven't done either ever or for a while at least. Yeah.
So some of the things we do there is we're very big on communication with the users. So it's everything from, obviously emails and whatever. But one of the aspects we have with our technology in the app is a company group. So think of it kind of like a Facebook group, like a Facebook feed of just your company. So it might say, you know, Sarah did a 20-minute walk, or Joe did a 10-minute meditation, or whatever. And you can like comment and like and high five and do all these cool things to kind of build the camaraderie. So we do get folks who are like, hey, at first I wasn't so sure about this thing, but it's pretty cool. You know, they convert down the road. But on top of that,
your own virtual water cooler.
Kind of, yeah, exactly. And then what I think really differentiates us is the company is paired with their own coach. So there's an actual human being on the other side who reaches out proactively, and they'll say, hey, Kurt, like, you know, saw you did the 10-minute walk yesterday. That's really great. How'd it feel? How are you doing? Do you have any questions? And they interact with the staff. So you get people who are like, you know, every once in a while, because we can track all the like the compliance and who's participating, who's not. And we found like you get those folks who they'll do the activities, but they're not going to go and post. They're not going to participate out loud. But then when we kind of get them on their own and we, you know, direct message with them, they open up and they get into it. And, you know, humans are very tribal animals. You know what I mean? Like we're definitely pack animals for sure. So as the group gets more into it and gets more engaged, they actually tend to pull people in with them because everybody's doing it, right? Like if you're in a room of 100 people and 99 of them walk out, like you're going to follow wherever they're going. You know what I mean? You're not just going to stand there and like, see what's going on. So that's kind of part of it too, is like if we can get sort of that tipping point, like, you know, 30% or so like into it, generally speaking, you're going to pull in a lot more people than that. And we have like really, really strong engagement rates. So a typical wellness program at a company might be like 15% participation, 20%. Routinely in our challenges, we get over 50. You average about 60, 65%. We've had groups up around 90%, which is insane.
To do anything, you can't get 90% of everybody to do anything.
No, and so, but we do, and some of it's how the challenge is structured and how, you know, how we incentivize the group and that kind of stuff. But we find like once those folks who maybe were skeptical in the beginning do it a little bit and they participate and they have some fun, it's a lot easier to bring them onto the longer term program to go from there. Now they've tasted the food. You know what I mean? Like they've had some fun, they've enjoyed it, they've done it with their peers, they see it's pretty cool, and they want to continue beyond that.
So once they get into it initially, now you got them on board, you got up to 90%, I mean 30%, 50%, all those are great numbers. I just know that. So how do you keep them motivated long term? Because I mean, this is not a 21 or 30-day process.
Yeah.
This is a forever process.
100%.
That we need to get into.
Great question. So we have kind of like our evolving calendar throughout the year of, we'll focus on certain topics. Like we like to use like the World Health topics. So like, January is Heart Health Month and things like that, just to bring awareness to certain topics, keep some variety in there. But what's cool is employees can actually work with a coach beyond just the corporate program. So if because like I said, we have that one-on-one aspect. So if they decide, hey, I do need a little more help with my nutrition, or, I'm struggling with stress and I want to kind of figure that out, they can literally just direct message the company coach and we'll work with them to get signed up, and they can go get that personal attention and care beyond just the regular program. So we go really wide, we get a big group in there, but we can go really deep as well to give that personal.
So it's very customized based on what each individual person needs,
Yeah,
right? Because we're all different. That's one of the key issues that you
Yeah.
have. And that's probably why you're having a higher success rate, because it's not like one size fits all.
Exactly.
And that's a big difference. So we're running out of time. Any last words, or you want to sum this up for us? What's the most important things people should be thinking about now to get moving ahead?
Oh man, that's a loaded question. I would say wherever you are, wherever you're starting, going back to that sort of skill piece, if you feel like you're stuck, you don't know where to start, is just either trying to identify the skill that you're not strong with yet. So it could be your food or exercise, what have you. And if you haven't started, is just start doing something. Just like if you were to, invest a little bit of money each month or put a little in your 401k or what have you, this is an investment in your physical and mental well-being, and it's going to compound over time. So go for a 10-minute walk after you eat your food, or sit down and just have 5 minutes to yourself if you can make that happen. You know what I mean?
Right.
Do a little something for yourself each day, and you'll find that opens the floodgates to you doing more and being okay with doing more, because now you've made a little bit of time for yourself. So I would start there.
Awesome, Joe. We really appreciate it. Thanks for
my
coming
pleasure.
on. Joe Villegas, you're listening to Master Your Finances. Have a great day.
That's all for today's episode of Master Your Finances. Miss Kurt Baker's biggest money managing tip, or even a full episode? Head on over to masteryourfinances.us or 1077thebronc.com/masteryourfinances. Look for Master Your Finances on Anchor, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts. We'll see you next time, only on 1077 The Bronc.